So has this happened to you before? You're on a sales call, you ask a great question, a killer question, but you get a bad answer. And then what do most reps do? They move on to the next question. This is not what you should do. You need to realize that when you get an answer like you ask them what they want, they're like, I don't know, just trying to get back on track. What does that actually mean? And so instead of moving to the next question, we teach our reps how to do a little game we call question catch. It's the ability to ask the same question multi different ways and still create connection, because each one of your questions need to have not just the question that's asked, but an intention behind it. I always teach that you need to have an outcome for whatever it is you do, and your outcome can't just be to sell. So each one of these questions that you ask are driving the prospect, driving the listener to have a certain image in their mind. And when you ask that question, you might get a surface answer. And so instead of going to the next question, re-ask the same question in a different way. In this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. So if you don't know me, my name's Eli, and I always say that the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your communication. And it is so important to have excellent communication, not just what you say, but what you look for, because communication is a two-way street, and you need to understand what a good answer is and what to do if you don't get one. This is the skill that truly pays the bills. The first thing you need to understand is that if you ask a good question, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the question, doesn't mean there was something wrong with the prospect, not anything wrong with you. It's just how normal conversations work. If they had absolute clarity in why they were there and what these answers were, they probably wouldn't need you on this call. Part of the point of a call is to get people really clear and emotionally associated to the circumstances of doing nothing. First, we need to get absolute clarity and know that when you're wanting to go deep, the reaction, the knee-jerk reaction, is for them to stay surface and ambiguous. They don't have a script. They're not trying to mess it up. It's just how conversations work. Most people are vague, not because they're bad people, not because they're broken people. They aren't clear themselves in some of these answers. They've not given the time, energy, and attention to really think through and get associated to what's stopping them, how long this bin's going on, how important is it, what's going on in their life that makes this a priority now. So we've not really been digging ourselves when we think about the problems we have. That's why we need a guided professional to actually take them through a process that gets them not just to become a buyer, but to become someone who's associated in their life to the consequences that they do nothing and the pure pleasure and satisfaction that will come with them actually moving forward in their life with your help. So we need to kill one belief real quick, right away, before we even get into this, and that's that a question doesn't work. If you had a tool like a hammer and you missed the nail, it doesn't mean the hammer's broken. You just need to readjust your grip and strike that bad boy again. But you need to do it in a new way. You can't just ask the same exact question. You need to have the skill of being able to ask the same question many different ways to really find what's going on for people so we can get out of surface land and into the place where the conversation becomes deep and connected. In the game we play with our reps called Question Catch, we teach them that average rep, they collect questions, but great reps, they collect answers. When you're asking a question, you need to know what a good answer sounds like. And so as you ask that question, you need to have intention behind your question, not just to ask the question. It blows my mind when I see so many sales reps, it seems like their outcome in asking a question is just to ask the question. And they get a bad response and they go to the next question. You need to know what you're looking for. If you don't know what you're looking for in your life, in your business, or with a question, it's going to be pretty hard to hit that target. So imagine this. You ask me a question, something like, hey, what makes you want to lose this weight? And I say, as the prospect, I just want to get back on that horse. I just want to get back doing the things I'm doing. That tells you nothing. That becomes a dead end. The average rep will just say, okay, sounds good. And then they start asking, well, what's your budget to fix that? You didn't get the answer. So pause and be able to ask the same question in a new way. You could say, yeah, getting back on that horse. We hear that all the time. When you think about getting on that horse, what does that look like in your day to day? How does that change things from what you're doing right now? Tell me what would be different with you back on that horse. Then they're going to say, I'd have more energy to play with my kids. They're going to give you a better answer. You know that because you actually had to ask the deeper question that got a deeper reason. And so It's not the question, it's your ability to use the question, but you're not going to be able to use the question correctly unless you know what you're looking for. Them saying getting back on the horse means nothing. Them saying having the energy to play with their kids tells you a heck of a lot more. So a couple rules to make this work. One, you need to know what kind of question you're asking. You need to know the reason you're asking the question. Every question has a job. Every question is a tool. People do this all the time. They might ask a question like, how long has losing weight been important to you? That's two questions. That's a question around importance, and that's a question to find their why. And there's a question around timing to find the duration of how long they've been dealing with this or how long they've been thinking about this. One question, one job. Two, one clean question at a time. When you ask something like, how long has this been important to you? That's two questions. So you're going to get whatever answer is easier for them to answer, most likely to be the last thing that you said because of the recency bias inside of somebody's mind. That's what's going to sit there in the prefrontal cortex. They're going to give you a bad answer because you gave them a bad and confusing question. Every question has one job. It's one tool with one outcome. Next, let me show you this in a timing question. You might ask somebody, how long have you wanted to lose this weight? And they say, a while. That tells you nothing. Then you could say, a while. We hear that all the time. Yeah, I feel you. We're hearing people talk about how they've had these issues for a long while. Nothing new here. But let me ask you, when you say a while, has this been a couple months, a couple years, or even longer? They're going to say 5 years. Well, 5 years. Thanks for sharing. And so what I'm beginning to do, you'll see here, this is a bonus tip for another video. I'm wrapping my question. When I get a good answer, I'll give positive reinforcement. Think about it like this. Behaviorism is a thing. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And so I give them a positive nudge when they're actually giving me the things that I want. My business partner, you might know, Chase Hughes, he has this interrogation protocol. We'll talk about that in another video as well. But what we want to do is be able to recognize that neural pattern when somebody is moving in the right track versus when we need to cut off that pattern of thinking, when you can see they're going to go back into an excuse or back into la land. You don't want that. This is what we call tempo management and conversation control. But for now, just know this. You want to have clean questions and you want to have multiple ways to ask the same question. And when you ask those questions, you're looking for a specific answer and you know what a good answer sounds like and you know what a bad answer sounds like. Now, even as it relates to a timing question, there's a couple different things at play here. You could ask somebody, how long have you had this weight? They might say 30 years. But you could also ask, how long have you been seriously considering doing something about this? When did this become important to you? These are different types of timing and duration questions. They're going to get you different answers. That's going to build a gap. That's going to bring up a lot more questions as to why this became important now. Was there a trigger moment? Something happened? Or why the heck have they been putting it off all this time? Because this is also going to help you figure out why they've been putting it off. And that reason they've been putting it off in the past could be money, could be time. If you don't deal with that now and get clarity around that now, in the call, that reason why they haven't in the past is going to be the reason why they don't at the end of the call. So you're getting a lot of juice here, you're getting a lot of information, but you got to know what you're looking for in each one of these questions. Also, when you're asking a timing question, know that they're most likely going to be ambiguous. So something I did a couple of minutes ago, I did a binary. Would you say this has been there for a couple years, a couple months, or even longer? They're going to have to tell me an answer there. And then when they say it, they claim it. I positively reinforcement. I give them that positive reinforcement. And now we're on the right track. I gave them a self-selection criteria for them to identify with. I remember the very first time I ever took a sales call. This was years ago. I didn't know what I was doing with ads. So we just attracted the most unfit people. Let's just say that. And this first guy, I asked him, what was it that had him on the call today? He says, hey, just looking for information. I said, great. Happy to help you get that. I hear people asking me for information all the time. Happy to help. What kind of information are you looking for? Just want to see what you do. Great. We do a lot of things. And typically when people hop on these calls, they're having trouble with this or this, which sounds most like your situation. He goes, I guess kind of this and this. I said, great. What makes you say that? So it took me several questions to get to the response that I wanted. And he said why he was saying that he had an issue with those. And then we got to some meat. If I just had one question on the script, I wouldn't have gotten there, but I got there because I know, as you now know, what we're actually looking for. We're looking for a specific answer. Your questions have an outcome for each, and each question is a tool. Never forget that. Now I want to zoom out a bit, and this is something that happens that so many reps do, especially when they're new. They abandon the question. They ask the question, it doesn't land, they abandon the question, and they move on to the next question. Each question you ask should have a reason. And realize this, as I've said before, they're not trying to be ambiguous. They're not trying to be difficult. A lot of times it's been really tough for their brain to get clear, to get associated, because it is painful and they don't want to think about it. And they might say things like, oh, I know what you're doing, all of that. You just need to connect and re-ask the same question another way. Don't abandon your question. What these people need is clarity. And you need to know inside of your own mind that you're providing a great service, getting them really connected to the why, what's behind them being on the call. And so you want to have different ways to ask the question so it doesn't feel like an interrogation, but you got to know as you're looking for this information as if you were a behavior CIA optimist or whatever it is, like you're in there, this operator operating on somebody's mind and heart to get their brain, body, and motivation reconnected to what's real for them and why they need to do something about it. Don't abandon those questions. You need to know in your heart of hearts that you're doing a great service to these people by getting them absolutely clear. And it's clarity they would not have without you not abandoning them, not abandoning these questions, and not abandoning the answers that you know are inside of them. You got to believe that it's there. You got to believe that it's worth it in order to get past that resistance so you can clearly connect and get them connected and associated to what's real for them. Don't abandon your questions. I say this in all my presentations and all my sales calls. In the back of my head, I'm saying this. I'm not here to get through these questions. I'm here to get these questions through to you. And so each question has an intention behind it to get an answer. That alone, being intentional with what you do in your sales calls, in your presentations, and in your life will make you more powerful. But you got to take the time, energy, and attention to think about why you're asking what you're asking and expect an answer. And then when you don't get the answer, hey, expect the best, but prepare for the worst. Your preparation for those worst answers will be key in you knowing what you're looking for. You got to be able to be really associated to what a good answer is. And most sales reps, they try to ask these perfect questions, memorize this perfect script, but you can miss a lot if you don't know the answer you're looking for. When I hear some of the top sales reps in the world, they're not these inauthentic script monsters. There's AI that can do that these days, and AI is getting pretty good. Part of what makes you powerful is your ability to be human and work within a real intention behind your words. That intention, that connection, that authority, that desire to get somebody clear and certain about the next steps in their life, they're going to feel that. That's your superpower. That's what you want to be able to do in all of your conversations, not just in sales calls, not just in presentations, but in your life. You are that powerful and you can change people's lives. So to recap, bad reps just try to collect a bunch of questions they put on their script and they ask a bunch of questions and they get confused when it doesn't land or they don't buy, but their whole outcome was to get through the script, was to get through the questions. You connect deeply because you know what a good answer sounds like. So if you do have a sales script, maybe write down next to, take a printout of it, and next to each one of those questions, write down what a great answer is, an okay answer, a bad answer, and have 3 or 4 ways that you can take them from bad answer to good answer. Absolutely crucial. Know what that is. And so if you're new here, we've not been posting a lot of content, but I've been in the sales game for a long time. I got a business partner, Chase Hughes. I got a business partner, Eli Sanchez, absolutely amazing, best in the world. Chase has a much bigger YouTube channel than me. I'm new to this content game, but we're going to put a lot of content out there showing you what we're doing in the sales world. Stay tuned. Click subscribe. You know the drill. Do the thing. And I'll have a link down below to some resources that we have. And you can follow me on Instagram, Eli Wild, as I'm going to start posting more content, I promise. And if I see you in the next video, see you at a live event, or see you at one of our seminars, I can't wait to meet you and have you ask me some questions and maybe do this question catch so we can role play and both level up our sales game so we can help a heck of a lot more people. Until the next one, I'll see you then.